Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the Vibe Daily Chat group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
All right, welcome back to the VIBEZ Daily podcast. It is day 94 of our devoted series. We have been going through the entire Bible this year from cover to cover, and again find ourselves here in 2 Samuel today, covering 4 more chapters. I am back again, joined by my wife Victoria, who is with me this week to conclude the book of 2 Samuel and dabble a little bit in 1 Kings here at the end of this week, but continuing in the life of David, essentially his reign in his kingdomship, or I don't know, that's not a word, but as he rules in his kingdom. So left off here at the end of 17, Absalom is kind of plotting to go after King David, get some advice, doesn't like that advice, get some other advice, likes that advice, but that advice was intentionally meant by God to kind of mislead him and lead to chapter 18 and his downfall ultimately. And so, David gets wind of that and kind of is prepared for it here in chapter 18. What did you find interesting here as David and Absalom kind of prepared to go to war?
Yeah, I think this is interesting to me because now David wants to go out to war, and his people are like, nah. Like, no, you can't. This is when you should have been out in war. You was messing around with Bathsheba. But I do think it was interesting that they were like, no, like we'll go fight on your behalf.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting because they were so concerned about his life, right? And saving him, which, as we see at the end of this chapter, when Absalom dies, like, and into the next chapter, like, he's so concerned about Absalom's life.
Yeah.
And it's like all his warriors are concerned about him. So I think it's really interesting there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean, ultimately his life is the one that's of value, right, to Absalom, because that's what really changes things.
Right.
So, I think he takes their advice, right? He kind of heeds to their recommendation. Which again, just some wisdom from David, some wisdom and some humility, right? That he takes this advice and actually chooses to follow it. And so, what's crazy is Absalom's death is not even because some like great warrior like catches him slipping on the field.
It was his Lux 5 pounds of hair. Like, you know, it's like the one thing that got him all the fame and stuff, entangles him.
Yeah.
Leads to his death. Like, ultimately, right? Like, it's the way you look, it's his hair, it's all this stuff you got going. And it just gets him caught up, like, literally, into a tree.
Literally. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That, like, I will say, I also thought it was crazy because I thought that would have killed him in and of itself, but it really just trapped him, right? It's just back and forth about who gets to kill him. And then ultimately, you know, Joab in 14 says, I'm not going to waste time with you. And he takes 3 spears in his hand and thrusts them into Absalom's chest.
Not one. Because one won't do. 3.
Anyways, I'm tired of y'all. Like, y'all want to sit here and argue back and forth about who gets to, you know, nobody wants to do it. Fine. I'm not gonna waste time with you.
Because guess what? Joab's not scared of David. Everybody else scared about what the king gonna say. Joab's like, I run this. On this battlefield here, like, Joab's been running it.
Yeah.
No matter what the king say.
Yeah.
I'm finna throw 3 spears in your boy's chest.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go home to our wives and our children.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's crazy. But it sounds like he was still alive after that. And then like, and again, this seemed a little interesting, but then like, because there's 10 young men, you know, who were Joab's armor bearers surrounded him, and they're the ones that like struck him and killed him. But yeah, from there, like that's the end of Absalom.
Yep.
And his story is over. But anything that you thought was interesting in the rest of kind of 18 here?
Yeah, I mean, this is again the irony again that I thought I mentioned yesterday was that Joab brought him back, Absalom back, did all this to bring Absalom back to in David's presence, be back home, vouch for him. And Absalom starts wilding out on Joab and on his dad, the David. And I think that Joab was probably just fed up at this point. Like, I tried. Like, I'm fed up. And now that David is super sad about it, yeah, absolutely. Joab's probably just fed up with David too. Now, I know I'm going into 19, but, you know, the king's like, he's grieving, mourning his son, even after all that he has done, which I understand, right? I understand. Like,
yeah.
He's still your son. Like, you hate that your children do these things. It doesn't make you love them less. Right?
Yeah.
So that part I do get. But I do understand that Joab, he's about over it.
Yeah. So just before, because I think this is a good part. I did think it was interesting, like as they go to report the news to him, it reminded me of when like they told him that Saul died, and then
oh yeah,
like later on, like that he treats everybody else with just like, oh, you think this is good news, but like you know, now you gotta die. So it was very interesting because I feel like Joab was kind of like, why do you want to go tell him? Like, you're not gonna get a reward. Like, he's not going to be happy about
trying to
this.
help you out.
This is not good news. And so like, yeah, he just kind of sends this, you know, these people to send him the news of what's happened, and you know, again, just not happy. Like, this news, under any circumstance, is it good news for him, right? Like, he just doesn't want to see it in this way. I mean, you said he still grieves for Absalom, but yeah, you're right. Joab is kind of like, bro, these cats is out here fighting for you.
Yeah.
They putting their life on the line, and you got the nerve to be upset and sad and weeping rather than to like celebrate them and appreciate them.
Right.
You out of pocket, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I get it's his son, but you just gotta do better. Go cry on your own time.
Go cry in your chamber.
Yep, on your own time. In front of the people, though, put on a face, because these people need to see you and be encouraged.
Yeah, because these are people's sons that are dying, right? Like, everyone matters, right? Like, each person here who is laying down their life here to fight, like, they all matter still, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's just, it's I'll say personally kind of, I wouldn't say convicting, but challenging, because, you know, it's really hard, I think, in leadership to be like public and open with what you feel and what you're going through, because you're always concerned about the people.
Yeah.
And so like to hear an opportunity where he wanted to be public and open, and now it's kind of just like criticized, right? Because like, how you got the nerve to feel whatever you feel when, you know, we feel the way that we feel. Yeah, it's just kind of challenging. Like, you see why leaders tend to say, like, you know, they kind of keep some of their private lives or some of their private struggles to themselves, because it feels almost insensitive, you know, for me to complain about how hard my life is, quote unquote, when like there are so many people who have it worse.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just very interesting to kind of see that dynamic play
No,
out.
that's real. I can see that.
Yeah. But there's kind of this back and forth on him actually being restored king. So we're here into 19 at this point. And you know, kind of like wait, why haven't I been, you know, reestablished as king yet type of thing for David. But ultimately he does. He gets reestablished as king, as he is supposed to be. Anything that jumped out to you here in 19?
Yeah, I think this part was interesting to me about, like you said, who was gonna be first to like reinstate him for one, but then what really jumped out to me more so was the fact that like David feels like he's over Joab, like they're over each other, because now he's saying he's going to put what's his name, Amasa over the army in place of Joab. And I think of course because he killed his son, but and so many others, but yeah, I think that was interesting that like David is redoing things, and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see a similar situation, kind of what we saw a couple chapters ago, where David's in disagreement because, you know, everybody's trying to be an adversary, or in this case, they're trying to be an adversary. This is verse 22, where it says, "Son Zariah, do we agree on anything? Have you become adversary today? Should any man be killed in Israel today? Am I not aware that today I'm taking over Israel?" And so, same kind of concept where it's like, look, I'm not trying to kill anybody. So you're not my preference. Like, just establish me as king. Like, I just want to be king. I just want to rule as I'm supposed to be, and ultimately makes an oath not to kill, you know, Shimei. So, or Shemai, I don't know how to say his name specifically, but yeah, again, just to see that repetition of his heart, I thought was interesting there.
Yeah. But it's so funny because, like we said before, this is one of the people where David's like, well, I'm not going to kill you, but my son Solomon. My son Solomon gonna get you and on his deathbed.
Yeah.
He like, remember, don't make him pay.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting. Yeah, but here we go with Mephibosheth coming back. Like I said, here he is.
Yep, this is the story you mentioned the other day.
That mentioned yesterday that like he's looks a mess. And it's just like nobody would saddle my donkey so that I could find you. Now Ziba had this whole story about how Mephibosheth was staying with Absalom and that he wasn't loyal to the king and all this stuff. And so, you know, I think it's interesting that like the king was just like, divide the land. I don't know why he didn't retaliate against Ziba because he realized what was more of the truth maybe. But he divided them. Mephibosheth was just like, no, he can take it all. Which shows you, like, the heart of Mephibosheth. They're like, yeah, he probably wasn't out here trying to do me dirty. He's crippled. And if his caretakers aren't taking care of him, we ain't getting nowhere. He can't do anything. So,
yeah.
I think that was interesting. But then also, I love that he tries to provide back for this... these names, Barzillai, the Gileadite, who helped him out when he was on the run. He provided the food and the beds and all that for them. And so I do love that. It's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna, if you don't want me to do something for you, I'll at least do something for your sons and stuff. So
yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Like his heart, like you say, is always still to like do for others, right? Like he does want this peace. Like you can see this in him, that he wants this peace from everyone around him.
Yeah. Good. I'll say something jumped out was into 19, just kind of this Judah versus Israel kind of concept, which, you know, we've already seen the kingdom kind of divided in that. It's going to continue in that way, but that like they essentially jealous of Judah for kind of taking him across the Jordan. And, you know, they're just kind of like, man, it's our kinfolk. Like, we just did it because he's our relative. You know, he's from our tribe. And they're like, well, we got 10 shares because it's 10 of us. Like we got a larger share in King David than you do. And so I don't know, like it's just interesting to see just this divide kind of internally among Judah and Israel, specifically. So,
and the division happened so easily because, like I said, they were just with Absalom. The hearts of Israel were just with Absalom.
Yeah. So, who is also a relative of Judah, which is, interesting that Absalom went and kind of like went to, I won't say the enemy because they're all supposed to be Israelites, they're all supposed to be family, but like to go to the side that wasn't quite as loyal to David in that. So yeah. Okay. So chapter 20, again, we kind of see more revolt. Like David he's dealing with it. He's getting it from every side, man. Yeah. Like from every side here in this case. And so we're introduced to Sheba, and who's a Benjamite, right? Who at this time Benjamin is kind of with Judah, right? Like when we say Judah versus Israel, we're kind of saying Judah and Benjamin versus the other 10 tribes. It's kind of like what we're considering. So this is almost like an inside thing in this case, right? Because Benjamin is with Judah specifically. What jumped out to you here in chapter 20 as Sheba kind of goes at King David?
I think it's interesting because David just established Amasa over the army, right? And Joab finds an opportunity because Amasa is taking too long, right?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be there within 3 days, so like he doesn't he takes upon himself to like lead, right? And now all of a sudden he finds opportunity to like kill him. And it's kind of like, oh no, you're not going to take my place. I feel like that's what he said, right?
Yeah, you're looking at kind of like versus, really verse 4 is where he tells Amasa to do something, but then he kills him in verse 10, right? Where he's just like, he leans in, grabs him by the beard as if he were going to give him a kiss, and then stabs him instead. So.
Yes, and he said he continues to do this where he is acting like friend, right? And killing. Like, so all these warriors who he is killing off is
people that trust him.
Yeah. And that's the cold part about it. It's like you wasn't killing them because you were just a better warrior, straight up. Like you was killing them because you being deceitful.
Yeah.
And plotting against your kin. Like that makes it's so interesting. So he once again Joab is running around killing folk, doing what he wants to do. And ultimately like gets Sheba, right? When this wise woman, the town is like, well, listen, don't tear down our walls. Like, if you want Sheba, we'll get you Sheba. Like, I'll go over his head. Like, don't tear down the place. Like, you ain't gotta do all that. Tell me what you want. Yeah. And so, they eventually grabbed, and I think that was interesting too, that it was a woman, a wise woman. I think we keep seeing these wise women pop up.
Yeah.
Like, this was a wise woman here. A wise woman was one of the women that Joab had brought to King David to tell him to bring back Absalom. Like, these wise women are they?
Or even like last week, right, when it came to David and the guy who wouldn't share his food and stuff, right? And his wife comes out. He ultimately ends up taking her as his wife, Abigail, right? Who ends up taking as his wife. But that she was just like, hold up. Let me go ahead and just send some bread for y'all because this man is tripping.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, these wise women are holding it down. So.
Appreciate y'all. Because we be tripping. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it is good. You often see, as you said, how women will step into these positions and really kind of find a better solution. And I think there really is something to that. Like, I think as men, we can be pretty impulsive and prone to violence, like choose violence first, right? and just like I even think about like our kids are a little different. Like I feel like Naomi is very meticulous. I don't even say just like Violet, but just she's very meticulous. She's gonna figure out her way through, around something or come up with a plan and execute it. And like I look at Blake do certain things, and he just forces it to happen. Like he's just gonna make it happen with just brute force and strength. And like it's like he be breaking like some of our equipment and stuff, just force it. I'm like, no, if it doesn't go that way, then stop. It's probably not working right. Like, let's figure out which direction you're supposed to twist it instead of just trying to force it to happen. And I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of how.
Yeah, bless, like, you ain't telling no lies. Bless his whole 6-year-old self. Like, whew. Yeah, it's like we're not thinking. We're doing. Just
do.
We're getting it done.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen. Okay, it's gonna work. I'm gonna make it work.
Oh goodness, that was a good one.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, you just see that. Like I said, just the women in come in and say, "There's a smarter way to do this, and we can handle this a little differently." But,
appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So, chapter 21. As we kind of end here today, really kind of starts with, man, kind of the making up for a sin, a past sin, right? There was something that was happening. I think a famine is going on in the land, and David was trying to figure out why we have this famine. Kind of inquires of the Lord, and God reveals that like ultimately Saul had a sin towards the Gibeonites that had not been atoned for, and they needed to atone for it and whatnot. So what do you think was interesting here in 21?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting that, like, so this famine hits, 3 years have gone by, and now David's like, Lord, explain to me what's happening. Like, I love that he did go to the Lord. It was just like, why is this happening? I think we do that to us, or we do that too sometimes, maybe not so much seeking a response, but someone's like, why do these things keep happening to me, right? And so I love that he gets this clear response from the Lord of like what has happened, and that I think is really interesting that like, now Lord, like you could have done this at any point in time. Like you didn't wait till now to like have this famine, and why now was in my mind, but the fact that it was something that David didn't even do, that he was suffering the consequences for, which is really interesting. Well, not just David was suffering, but all of Israel was. And so I think that was really interesting that God would hold out until now, but then also make them suffer for something that Saul did.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's just, I appreciate him inquiring of the Lord. It is kind of interesting that, like, again, it's not his fault. He's just kind of dealing with the consequences of someone else's. But we'll see others will deal with the consequences of his sin, here shortly, right? So this is not like he doesn't pass on some of these same things at some point. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that ultimately what the Gibeonites wanted wasn't like money or anything. Just essentially they wanted an eye for an eye of sorts, right? Like they wanted members from the house of Saul's family, and David starts to protect Mephibosheth because he made a covenant and a vow there, but the others, the rest of Saul's family, man, is kind of given up here, and they're executed and whatnot. Anything you think was interesting about that, even maybe the burial, anything of that nature that was interesting?
Yeah, I mean, the Gibeonites, so are these the ones who, when they came, acting like they're from a long, far land, right? And they made the covenant that they would not, and so Saul broke that covenant, which is why it was a big deal that he killed them off, because he broke the covenant because they were supposed to keep the treaty.
Correct.
Between them, got you, that Joshua made.
Yeah, he tried to kill them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think it was interesting and just sad though. That like, yikes, just round them up and put them to death.
Yeah.
I think, I know that's just always so harsh to me, but that they might not have even known what their grandfather was doing right at that time, and so but yeah.
I mean, I think I'll say this, like, this is somewhat relevant, not even just as recording this, but as you're watching this, it's the day or the week after Easter, right? And like, as far as the year that we're doing this, and it goes back to just the significance of Jesus' death.
The atonement for sin.
Right, yeah, just that atonement, because we see this time and time again in Scripture that the consequence, the wages of sin is death. That's what atones. And oftentimes it could be a sacrifice, like an animal or something. But there were cases where it was just like, no, it had to be a life. We'll see that play out often, time and time again. And again, it just helps us appreciate Jesus as that ultimate atonement and sacrifice, to where this isn't necessary in the same way anymore.
No, that's real, because like you said, that was part of the Levitical laws, and I think we brought this up a couple times already since we read that text, where it's like this whole idea of if somebody murders somebody, like, the land is defiled, and we have to make the land clean again, right? And reconcile the land by the bloodshed of the murderers, right? And so I think you said, once again, we see that, as harsh as it may seem, we see it here.
It's good. Well, 21 ends with kind of a roll call of these Philistine giants that were killed. That David and his people ultimately kill. Anything you thought was interesting here in the end of 21?
I think it's really interesting that, like, David was about to get killed in this battle, and they were like, David, I'm gonna need you not to go out with us in battle anymore. Like, I think probably because he's getting old at this point, right? Like, he grew weary in battle. It's in verse 15. Like, he went down with his servants and fought against Philistines. He grew weary because he's probably old and tired. And someone was about to come, one of the giants was about to come in, try and kill David, and Abishai, son of Zeruiah, had to come to his aid and kill the giant instead. And so it's kind of like, like, David, your fighting days, I feel like it's here when we see the conclusion of that. Like, your fighting days are over. Like, this is when we got this on your behalf. But I think it just shows that, like I said, when Joab and them were going out to battle for him, it was no small feat. Right? Like, these were some serious enemies they're up against.
I don't know, I just think it's interesting to just call out these are all descendants of kind of the giant, right? Like, again, we kind of keep seeing this. They're not really wiping out anybody.
Right.
So it's like people just kind of keep coming back and showing up at this point. But I think you're right that it's this sign that David's days are coming to an end. And like, very much so, he's wearing down. I mean, but candidly, it should be. He's been on the run for years. He's been fighting for years. Ain't no way. Those knees gotta be weak.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Them joints gotta be hurting.
Come on, crack and snap and pop.
Yeah, like, it makes sense. He's just exhausted, but he was still trying to go out there and fight and do his part.
I think he probably caught the hint, though. I need to not be staying back when I'm supposed to be in battle.
Right.
Got myself in trouble.
He learned last time.
He's trying to be out there, but tell me, you old.
Yeah. So he learned his lesson, but now it's his time to sit down. So, all right. Well, we are getting to the end of David's story. We're almost there, and we'll come back and read a couple more chapters to conclude 2 Samuel tomorrow. But learning a lot from David, from his good, his mistakes, all the above. But again, hope this has been helpful and look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we'll pick up in chapter 22. But until then, take care.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible.